From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the business of esports. The Business of Esports podcast is sponsored by Esports Entertainment Group, a leading esports and online gambling company. For more information, go check them out at esportsentertainmentgroup.com. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast. I am Paul Doalibi, and I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, Jimmy Barada. For those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for all the love, the 5-star ratings and reviews. We really appreciate it. If you haven't yet, go tell your friends about the podcast. Go tell your colleagues about the podcast. This is how people find us. And go leave that 5-star rating if you truly enjoy the content. I know it in the background, the algorithm helps other people to discover the podcast. So, Jimmy, how you doing this week?
Yeah, I'm thinking I need to change my nickname. It's been about 4 months, and I thought I'd get you to say "thick boy" once or twice, but it's just not happening.
Not happening.
So we got to come up with something. I don't know. I'm tired. I played Apex last night for the first time gaming in about 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
And we hopped into a 3v3 arena mode match with my trio, and we swept them to match point and then got reverse swept. And It was really tough to stomach, and it just went downhill from there, and it was a pretty rough night. So
I mean, here's the good news. You're already doing better though than like 99% of Apex Legends gamers. I don't know if you heard, but they patched the game, I think today. And supposedly the game is now and today as in Wednesday when we record the podcast, the game is now supposedly more broken than it ever was. Like most people can't even connect. Wow. The game's crashing. The game's not working. There's the slow-mo lobbies. I don't know if you ever had that.
I just needed to hold me over until Free World comes out next week, so we're almost there.
Are you actually going to play New World?
Yeah, I'm good. Well, I wanted to ask you what faction I should choose because I know you like the beta. I didn't want to melt my graphics card. That issue is fixed, thankfully. And I'm curious. Yeah, excuse me, New World. Free World's the Ryan Reynolds movie, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So, what faction do you recommend? We're gonna dive into that next week.
Look, I played Covenant for the beta, but only because I like sort of the whole righteous, holier than thou kind of lore around Covenant. I'm tempted to try Syndicate, but I don't know. It's going to depend, I think, on the people I play with in terms of where they want to go. Because I think so much of the end game right now is going to be PvP, and I think you want to be in the same Syndicate as the people you're playing with.
Right. Well, so my group is trying to figure it out, and we can talk about it, I think, on the live show when we have some of the other friends there. But I've always been drawn by the dark side of the Force, so I was actually looking at Marauders, if that's how you pronounce it. So, just raid and pillage and that kind of thing.
That's what suits
kind of
you,
the
Jimmy.
opposite.
I mean,
well, you're Alliance, I'm Horde. It makes sense if
meaning I'm right, you're wrong. It's okay. I mean, we all. Anyways, it's one of those things. I am looking forward to it because Apex is in such a bad spot right now. I mean, there's a bigger business question of like, how is EA messing this up so badly, right? Like there was this huge defection from Warzone, right? Everyone's fed up with the cheating on Warzone. This was EA's chance, right? With Apex to welcome those millions of players with open arms, where our game's better, or we're more fun. There's no cheaters, right? Like this was the opportunity to scoop that huge audience, and they're really messing it up. And I don't know why, right? Like in the beginning when Apex had a bit of a dip, the argument was EA isn't set up for live service type of games, right? Respawn's sort of an old-fashioned development shop, make a game, put it out, focus on the next game, right? Not keep developing the current game a la Epic and Fortnite. But now you'd think 2 years, 3 years later, they'd have rejiggered their whole structure in their shop, right, to match the nature of their game, and would have the ability to put out patches that don't completely break the game at this point. I don't know. It's probably a longer conversation, but I don't know how I'm surprised you haven't run into major issues, because everything I'm hearing is it's a total disaster.
I've only had fun on it, honestly. I mean, I've read about these things, but yeah, still, for me, it was a placeholder game. I was one of those that, of the masses that left Warzone because of the cheating, because all these other issues. And Apex was that salvation for us. And it seemed like they weren't ready for the influx of new users,
Yeah.
right? Like maybe the first argument was, hey, you can't buy an audience. They had an awesome marketing campaign, right? All the streamers playing it 2 years ago for a month straight or whatever. And then the drop off. But like you said, longer conversation for the live show. So everyone tune in, Wednesday nights, and you'll hear some more fleshed out ideas and concepts on a whole host of issues, a lot of news, and Apex as well.
That is a good reminder for everyone listening to the podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, you can always find more content. Every Wednesday night, we do an after show. It's turning into more of a weekly news show because we get to so little news on the podcast. But it's a lot of fun. It's a bigger cast. It's live. We get to do it with you guys. You can always watch it in sort of rerun right when it hits the podcast feed. But highly recommend joining live, because you get to ask us questions, get in our faces. You know who I am anxious to ask questions to, though, Jimmy, is our guest this week. And we have none other than Brian Reedy, who is the CEO of Gamer Advantage. Brian, welcome to the Business of Esports podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Brian, for those of you for our listeners who maybe don't know about you or haven't heard of Gamer Advantage or what you guys do, would love if you could give our listeners a bit of your background, how you got into gaming, what you're focused on now, what Gamer Advantage does, like a bit of the Brian story.
Yeah. Before we get to that, though, it's Free Guy is the Ryan Reynolds movie. Jimmy got corrected so fast on saying Free World, but then nobody said it's actually Free Guy. I might get canceled.
We're a game podcast.
It was an excellent movie, honestly. I thought it was really well done. I would recommend seeing it. Go in with an open mind. I thought it was funny. I thought the premise of it was really unique. It hits some cliches that they're like, you would agree with, and they're not supporting it. They're kind of making fun of it. So I honestly, my wife and I hadn't been on a date in a long time. And so I said, it's so relevant. It's about glasses, first of all. It's like about that's the main part of it, is like you put on these glasses and you are a different character in the game. And it's about video games. And I was like, oh my God, it's perfect. So it was just had no idea what it was about. I love Ryan Reynolds. I think he's sexy. He's like a man crush, and right on Tom Hardy, Ryan Reynolds for me. We're going to get to know me real quick.
Can't argue with that. But Brian, now you opened a can of worms. Before you get into your intro, then I'm curious, why do you think Apex has sort of, why are they stumbling in their moment of potential glory here?
They've just shown stumbling since day one. I just think they've moved really slow since the day the game came out. Everybody said that when it was released, it could have really controlled the battle royale space, and it struggled to keep up with some of the more longer existing, even the Fortnites of the world. So they just have tripped over everything, in my opinion. And it's the player is so loyal to the game because the game is really good. Like, I love Apex, but it was for me the same thing with Destiny. It was kind of like in the beginning of Destiny, I just waited way too long for them to get caught up with what everybody else was doing. And you just kind of say, hey, if you release something, I'll get in and play. But man, I'm frustrated enough where I'm also playing other things at this point. That's my opinion.
I love another massive
disappointment with Destiny, and just not moving fast enough, giving us
but
what
that's
we
been
want.
like 10 years. Like,
Yeah.
what is there's got to be a threshold of tolerance for stuff like this. You know, I think that you got to learn as a developer. I think the gaming community is really critical. They expect everything to be figured out. Every new release or upgrade or change has its challenges. It just does. Like Vanguard and the Sun in Vanguard were like cracking up about this Sun.
That was so
and it's
bad.
just like, who approved that? Like, what is happening? But then they might say like,
come out
F it,
in
let's
game
do
testing?
it. Let's see if they notice. You know, so I don't know anymore. I try and give the developers some credit because we live in such an awesome time where, like, if it's not perfect, we're mad. And I feel that every day in my business. So while it doesn't surprise me, honestly, but I don't think there's a studio that, listen, I'm a GTA fan. Like, I'm just like, all right, sweet. When I'm 40, I'm going to play GTA 6. So it's like everybody. It's not just the Origin and the others, you know.
Well, Strauss Zelnick, the CEO of Take-Two, when he was on the podcast, promised he was going to announce GTA 6 on this podcast. So in other words, you're never getting GTA 6.
I'm just so desperate for it at this point. So now I'm looking, but the release I'm looking to more than anything where they haven't strayed and they've committed is Farm Sim 22. That's where my head's at right now.
This is scary.
I'm telling you, like, I'm like, you're finally a studio that did what they said they were going to
do. Brian, sorry to get back. I want to get back on track here. Again, your background and the background of Gamer Advantage.
Totally. And like you said, how did I get into gaming? I've been a gamer my whole life. And as you can tell, like, I'm really interested in these topics, both about what we do and far beyond that. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I have been since I was 10 years old. So from like a health perspective, I'm not a doctor, but I'm as close to not being a doctor that you can be. I pretty much, it's a daily science experiment since I was a decade old. You know, I was just so young. And so that part of my life, I'm very in tune with my body, and I understand a lot of things medically just from living with it. So I go through my whole life as just a gaming member, right? I'm in the community. I'm a little bit just in TV and YouTube, but never a participator, just always a viewer. I worked in banking, actually. I was going to get forced to move out of state. I was in public relations. I was a branch manager. It was a great job. It provided for my family. They wanted me to move. I said no because my wife's family has been selling eyeglasses to eye doctors for 50 years. And I told her I'd never make her move away from her family business. So I basically went to my father-in-law and said, hey, either I take your daughter and your only grandchild to Cincinnati, or you give me a job at the family business. So against his better judgment, he hired me. And I just fell in love with eyewear. I wore glasses my whole life. Vision is super important to a diabetic. It's just something that made sense to me. I felt comfortable in it. It wasn't an industry that I thought was like had a bad rap or whatever, but I didn't really know anything. Turns out I was wrong in a lot of that. But every day I was getting asked to make blue light glasses when I joined the company about 5 years ago. I mean, every single day I would get an email from companies you're familiar with and have probably seen launch blue light glasses that I made, and then ones that you maybe never heard of that are in a different, the fitness industry or the sleep industry or whatever. And what I was finding is I was the one sourcing the product. Like, that was my job. And so the lens cost 50 cents from China. The frame cost $2. It cost me $1 to get it here. So I got $4 or $5 into it. I'm selling it to them for 12. They're selling it to you for 60. And I'm like, well, first and foremost, as an entrepreneur, I'm on the wrong side of this freaking equation. I said, sorry, Jimmy, you're going to say something.
I was just going to say, as a glasses wearer, I'm going to need your contact after the show.
Yeah. So then I was like, and we know what we make our glasses for and sell them to the doctor. And there's no doubt. I mean, a pair of standard glasses will sell to a doctor for 80, that they'll sell it for 300. That's the markup. It is what it is. And it goes bigger than that too. Some doctors pay $10 for a pair of glasses. They sell to you for $150, but you don't know any better because you have insurance and you just pay whatever they say when you leave the office. And we can get more into that later. But what I was saying is, I was like, I'm not really comfortable with like my reputation in the eye care industry being the guy who makes blue light glasses that like are founded on snake oil and clickbait. Because I know damn well that nothing this factory has done has ever shown me any proof that it does the things these companies are saying it does. So I ended up having them sign this document like, we basically can't come back to you if we get sued and said that this frame will make somebody sleep better, and then they fall asleep driving their car, get into a car accident, kill somebody, and they sue us and said, hey, I was wearing these glasses. They come back to us as the manufacturer, say, hey, here's who I bought it from. So then I was like, well, if I had to have somebody sign that, now I really hate selling these. So as a non-believer in blue light, somebody who remembered the beginning of Gunner and when the category was created and has been a gamer their whole life, like I was on the same side. I was like, it's just a bunch of BS, whatever. But I was in the eye care space and I kind of knew it wasn't BS because there are a lot of things. The conversation of blue light and light into the eye is so much bigger than the marketing term digital eye strain. So I was like, I'll go to some continuing education, talk to some ophthalmologists, surgeons, neurologists. I want to really get the opinion on, in a sense, the theory of light, because there's multiple theories of how light works too, which is even crazier. And it turns out that it is totally a real thing. And there's a medical application for it. And the real conversation is that, you know, we can go deeper into this as well, because this is the biggest point, but I'm giving you a background. But it's that there is a duplication of the wavelength that comes from the sun that's coming from these artificial light sources, and we can't change evolution. You're programmed to be awake when the sun is up and asleep when the sun is down, no matter what you think, no matter how cool you think you are. That's the story. It's 10,000 years to manipulate the DNA of a species. It just 10,000 years from now, we could totally be nocturnal if we keep doing what we're doing. But until we get there, this generation is going to suffer the consequences, and my kids are going to suffer the consequences, and so forth. So I went to the only lens manufacturer out of all the research I did, and I looked at 100 different lenses, 50 different manufacturers, and I went to the only one who attached it to a clinical trial. And I said, listen, you're the only one who has actually said, not because yellow blocks blue, and if I put yellow lenses in a pair of glasses, they must be helping you. But you said people wearing these glasses for 5 days experience these things. One of those examples that we lean on is a 96% increase in melatonin production in an average of 5 days. Those are hard statistics. So it dawned on me, it was like the guy who invented sunscreen. Like, if you look through the evolution of the sun, it's really interesting. We've been afraid of it and like in love with it a lot back and forth over the last 60,000 years. And there was even a point where, like, not that long ago, we were afraid of the sun and everybody stayed inside. And then we realized it helped cure jaundice in newborn babies. And we were like, oh, wait, this has healing properties. So imagine the first guy who came out with sunscreen and said, rub this white cream all over your body. It's going to protect you from the sun. People are like, yeah, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Then people put a little on their nose, a little on their ears. That's the yellow lens, right? Like you feel like you should wear it, but it's so stupid that you're like, I don't ever want to be caught dead wearing it. I don't care if I get cancer. Like, it's basically the feeling. Now we know it's a freaking serious conversation, and too much time out in the sun without proper protection for somebody like me and Jimmy, who are so fair skinned that like it's burn or die. You know, that's it. There's no in between. We got to have it. And then you have kids, babies. It's like SPF 50 or like nothing. So if we look at blue light in the same sense, everybody in the industry besides Gamer Advantage is SPF ? And if I can today educate you on why you would never want ? protection for blue light eyewear, it should fall into the same feeling that's been created on why you know you need SPF 50 when you wear sunscreen. We just have to evolve as a society to recognizing the more cases we get of afflictions from blue overexposure to artificial light, the more you're listening to it. And then when somebody sues somebody, now we're really listening. That's when it gets, that's when Jeffrey Feiger comes in. He sues Sony because their TV burned this kid's eyeballs. I mean, it's going to happen in our lifetime, my prediction at least. So I went to the owner and I said, we got to put your lenses in gaming glasses. I know the industry, everybody's done it wrong. I know frames. My wife's family knows frames. We're doing it for 50 years. You do the lenses. Let's go in 50-50 partners. Let's do it. And he's like, I don't know who the hell you are. And I don't know what gaming glasses are, but I like where you're just coming at me after this presentation with this idea. I just like walked up and I was like, we got to start a company together. And so we took it a little slower after that. We went and had a beer. I kind of told him, and he's like, dude, I believe you. Like, I'm not a gamer. I believe in my product. I created it because both my grandparents had age-related macular degeneration, and I believe in my product. And I believe if you think it can help gamers, I'm all in. So that's where we started. So we're owned by the lens manufacturer and the frame manufacturer. We're not an Alibaba importer. We're not we have a combined over 100 years of optometric experience and understand eye care and beyond. So it's not just gamerglasses.com, it's Gamer Advantage, because this is a whole conversation of your eyes and your brain and your mental and physical wellness. And so we continue to try and release products that are a full 360 approach to eye health as it relates to gaming, because that's an industry that's the most exposed and the most underserved, and also the most susceptible to clickbait. So I'm fighting against the idea that you're being convinced by another company because they have better marketing than I do. They have more money than I do. They can tell a lie faster than anybody with the right amount of money. And it's just true. You can sell crap in a bag if you got enough money. It's just how it is if you do it right. And so we're up against that as a family business, but we're headed in the right direction. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, I love the story, and I know I bought Gunners like probably right when they came out, right? So that would be what, almost 15 years now, probably something like that,
at least.
And Paul in his 20s, right, was probably, I know the rationale in my head at the time was, these are going to make me a better gamer in some way, right? Like if I get a slight advantage in Counter-Strike, it's totally worth the $80 or $100 or whatever I paid for the glasses. My view on gaming hardware or gaming devices or gaming products since then has been, I think a lot of companies fall into one of two categories, right? They're either promising greater performance, right? This will make you better in some way, click faster, kill faster, whatever the metric is, right? Or you should be scared, right? Where you're going to lose your eyesight, so you have to wear these, or you're going to, your brain's going to go to mush, so you have to drink this, or some level of fear around, what gaming is doing to your wrists or your eyes or whatever else, right? Where do you guys fall if on that spectrum, if at all, or are you thinking of it in a different way? I guess I'm curious.
We're trying to think about it in a different way because there's already been plenty of sports that have gone through this process. The NFL is the best example. I mean, they've been playing football for over 100 years. It took 40 years to put thin pieces of leather on their head, right? And then as the helmet developed, it really wasn't until the NFL was sued in the 80s that they started really taking concussion research seriously. And now they're the biggest contributor to concussion research in the world. So unfortunately, we're a very reactive society for things like this. Like we talk about all this preventative healthcare that we're all in favor of, and then we don't prevent crap personally. So it's like, it doesn't make any sense, right? So it's like we want all these services and all these things so we can stay healthier rather than get unhealthy and then receive treatment for it. Rand Paul made a statement one time that I was a big fan of. Is like, insurance companies would rather pay to amputate my leg as a diabetic than pay for the shoes that improve blood circulation, right? But if I don't go buy the shoes, then I just should shut up about any opinion on that topic, because that's whether insurance covered them or not, I knew not wearing them was going to do this thing. I accepted that affliction of not doing it. So where we fall is in the we're not going to make the same mistakes the other sports made. Well, our industry is way too smart for that. It can't be argued that poor sleep is really bad for you. There's no argument there. I'm not trying to say that if you wear my glasses, you'll be a better gamer. In general, you're improving your sleep will have an effect on so many things that you do. I can't even quantify it. So do I want to scare you? Well, it's like scaring a football player that they might get a concussion. Even with the helmet, they can still get a concussion. They're even doing studies of saying like, wow, these players are experiencing a bunch of micro concussions that we don't even know are impactful until they're way older. And then it's like, oh crap, like wish we would have known about these things and done things to prevent them. So football players forever would get a bunch of concussions, and the next day they spend all day in a dark room watching film. It's like the worst thing you can possibly do to your brain after it's been rattled. So we're learning from those mistakes, and we're saying this is about sleep. 9 out of 10 gamers are saying they sleep horribly, but they're not doing anything about it. And the harder, the more effort you have to put into it, the less likely you are to commit. So the odds of you waking up every day, working out 5 days a week, drinking 80 ounces of water, eating 7 servings of fruits and veggies, just stop it, right? So we're trying to come out with products that replace those things, Like, here, you don't have to eat dinner anymore. You could just drink this thing. And it's like, okay, yeah, those can be temporary solutions. But unless you're going to remove all this artificial light, just like a mask became a standard to protect yourself from a virus, glasses are going to have to become a standard to protect yourself from the artificial light, because we already know what it's doing. It's just whether you choose to do anything about it or not. And if you don't, you have to accept the consequences of your decisions. And I'm not trying to scare you. Just sleep is the number one medicine and has been since the beginning of time. There's no arguing that. So if you're saying you're sleeping like crap, let's start there.
But Brian, what's the business rationale for not then taking it one step further and clearly defining the performance gains of the better sleep you get from wearing the glasses, right?
Well, we have done that, but we'll get canceled over those claims, right? So it's that fine line you're talking about walking, where I'm part of this community. Don't come here and tell me that if I wear these glasses, I'm going to win more Apex trios, because I know I'm going to call you out on that in 2 seconds, because nobody's ever done that.
Fair. I honestly, it's just I always feel it's like a bit of the golf. Like I've often used the golf analogy, right? Golfers will pay through the nose for anything that may even like have a 1% chance of lowering their score, right? It's literally this promise of maybe better performance people will open their wallets very quickly. And in some ways, I feel like the gaming industry hasn't. Maybe I'm just immune to it, or I block out the sort of the clearly over the top claims, but like I feel like the gaming industry hasn't embraced that fully.
Would you agree that, it's because gaming has been put in this category as a lazy pastime, and part of us still believes that's true, when in reality there's way more physical and mental functionality that goes into performing as a gamer? So we're trying to like remove the idea that it's just sitting on the couch playing Halo on Xbox. And it's really trying to figure out if you can get the scholarship, win the $50,000 prize, get picked up by the org. Like, that stuff doesn't come just because you're you. That comes from training, practice, exercise, all of those things.
But Brian, I could make the argument, right? And I think it would be a very reasonable argument to say, if I wear your glasses and I sleep better, right? That's going to have a far greater impact on my performance than, if I buy this new mouse that's 1 gram less than the other mouse, right? But yep. People are buying the mouse that's 1 gram less than the other mouse, hoping it will make them better.
Yes.
Why not tap into that in a very kind of...
Well, and we want to do that from an educational standpoint. That's what we're trying to do. So what we're really trying to do is form relationships with organizations that are willing to say, like, hey, we want to take this topic seriously. And if you're willing to let us, we'll actually put numbers to it. So I would invite any tier 1 org to make me put my money where my mouth is. And I'll pay for the neurologist to fly out there, who's third party, to hook you up and show you what the difference does between wearing the glasses and not wearing glasses. We've already done these studies. But a lot of this stuff is closed door stuff, because when you're dealing in the medical field, it doesn't have to be released to the public, because medical institutions share this information amongst each other. So if John Hopkins does a study, they might go to St. John's and share it, or go to Mayo and share it. It doesn't become like a white paper published study, right? So we have like way more than we're allowed to even talk about, because this lens is being used to treat ailments on the medical side, and has been long before I started Gamer Advantage. So when we bring it, we've tried the clinically proven, the melatonin, increase in melatonin production. Our audience isn't big enough. I can't captivate a large enough group to listen to Brian talk to them the way I'm talking to you. Yep. To convert that to an ad that competes against any other type of product in the space is very difficult. It's almost impossible to tell the message virtually. All we can do is continue to beg to be taken seriously. And as we grow in the caliber of influencer organization partners we work with, they start to then talk to a higher caliber, and then we're starting now to see like, oh wait, like, yeah, I get it. Like, we're ready to start taking the conversation of, does this light really have an impact seriously? And you guys seem like the right organization to have that conversation with. So I'm there. I just don't think I have the money to be aggressive enough in the way that it would take to out market and like fit into that category. Right.
Got it. Jimmy, sorry, I cut you off before.
No, it was a great conversation. I didn't want to interrupt the flow of it. And, Brian, you obviously seem like the kind of person that always takes the high road and wants to avoid, like you said, with the indemnification contract that you had these other guys sign in the past, right? You want to avoid these nasty issues where someone else's malfeasance or miscommunication of something would ever, would ever involve you. So, I definitely applaud that. For one thing, you saying, the rare opportunities of Brian speaking to an audience about the advantages, no pun intended, of your gamer glasses. I mean, our audience right now, right? Gameradvantage.com. I've been on the site this whole conversation just in awe of your products. And I think you guys are missing the coolest part to me about your brand, and that is how dope these glasses are. Like the Clintus limited edition, the Jared FPS limited edition drops, your Tweak limited edition drops, and even your standard product, your regular standing product line. And thank you for doing that. For those of you that are watching the show and not listening, Brian he has magnetic clip-on sunglasses, which I've never seen. I've been wearing glasses since kindergarten. I've had like the little metal hook things that are impossible to kind of finagle. And
shade control, that's what those are called. We sell a lot of those at my wife's business sells a lot of those. Yeah.
So, for me, like, I'm sold on it, not just because of the health advantages in sleeping or in better performance. If I see a gamer that I like, also not to mention just these colors, this lime green color, this kind of clear red, I haven't seen, and I obsess over frames. I order probably 2 new frames, a month, 1 new frame a month. Paying those outrageous prices you're talking about. And then I end up wearing the same frame every day because I'm not in the mood for this one, or it's too expensive to put my prescription in 6 frames and I should probably get rid of them, or, gift to my sister or my family, whatever. But I'm kind of rambling on here. I think your guys' frames are just the style are awesome enough to sell themselves. What have you noticed, I think, from these, that's where I wanted to take this actually, was what have you noticed from these unique activations, these one-off limited pieces that you've done with streamers, your intent to continue doing that, to sell your product, not just as a health advantage, sleep, performance, whatnot, but also just as a cool thing that there's tons of gamers that wear glasses. You have talent that are wearing your glasses that like it, I want to know more about that strategy and how that's paid off for you.
Yeah. So the thing that most consumers don't really pay attention to, which is fair, is that the lens and the frame are 2 different products, right? So all our technology really, as far as the health advantage and all those, and the wellness piece of it, it's in the lens. Then you take the frame side. Well, again, coming married into a family that does this with their eyes closed, I've seen hundreds of thousands of eyewear samples in the last several years. And it's not hard for me to look at a frame and be like, that looks good, that doesn't look good, right? And I always found it interesting, and I agree with you, because it shouldn't cost you $300, $400, $500, $600 to get your prescription in a pair of glasses, because that's so far from what it actually costs that it's crazy. It was like crazy to me. So I was always saying to that, like, why are we selling to the doctors? Why don't we just start a website? It's like, we don't really do that. It's like, we're safe. Like, we've been doing this for a long time. We sell to doctor. I'm like, yeah, but the doctor's making like 5 times more than you are. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So I think for us, it was like, we're capable of this stuff. Like, I found this frame. This frame is made of a very unique material that's incredibly durable. Like, I can bend these and I can hold these this entire podcast, and they will go right back to how they were. And I can fold them flat. I can put them in my pocket and sit on them. Yeah, am I going to scratch the lens a little bit? Maybe, but it doesn't matter because we don't coat our lenses. The blue light is a powder. The filter is a powder that's infused into the raw material because we manufacture it. It's very easy to take a lens and dip it into a blue light coating and call it a blue light lens. You have no freaking clue where that lens came from, what it's made of, all of those things. So when you buy eyewear, you have to select all of these things. I want anti-scratch, anti-reflective, blue light filter. You don't get to choose that with us. It's a double-sided coated oleophobic anti-smudge, anti-reflective coating with our patented powder built inside of it. You don't get to choose a crappy lens. It's not an option on our website. So with the Gale side of things, we kind of said that's the easy part. Could we test the idea and see how many people are buying the glasses because they look cool and how many people are buying the glasses because they're concerned about their health with blue light? What we found is more people will buy the glasses because they look cool. Then they get it and they're ultra impressed with how it makes them feel. So then they don't return it. That's the best part. So you're talking about, I don't know how often people buy shoes. It's a bad example, but sometimes you have 10 pairs of shoes, they're $100 a piece. And then you're like, damn, I can't buy all these glasses because they're so expensive. You're looking at $160 with prescription, with the sun clip to buy our glasses. So it's probably half, if not a third of what you're paying, unless you're going to like a Warby Parker, which is fine. That's not designed for your headset. It's not comfortable. It's not durable. It's the wrong material. It's not designed. And at the end of the day, even after all the frame conversation and styling and all that stuff, nobody has our lens. Nobody. So I don't care. We get to a point where I can't care anymore, because I'd love to say there's no competitors, but there's not, because nobody knows that what I know about our lens. I have to learn how to tell that story to the best of my ability. But even if you find something like, well, what is the difference? It's like the difference is so substantial. But if we just talk about the frames and the Gale, being able to do that for a content creator is something that was kind of done in the past, but it was done in a way and styled in a way that nobody wanted it. So it was like, if you know so much about eyewear, why the hell would you make a custom frame for me that I could pick somebody out from the other side of a stadium? Like, that guy's a gamer. Like, when I'm out in public, people are like, oh my God, those frames are so cool. They're never like, are you a gamer? Like, no, they just think they're bad, fashionable red frames. And when I snap the sun clip on, it's the same reaction. I've never seen that before. You know why you've never seen it? Because it's a pain in the ass for your doctor to sell it. So he doesn't. It's been around for a long time. The doctor generally doesn't care about the retail space. It's just some lady who says, go look at the frames, and you're not with your wife or girlfriend. You're like, do these look good? What do you think about these? Yeah, those look pretty good on you. I mean, that's this experience. It's crazy. So we're just different than that. We're taking it down to like really as low as we can take it by offering what would otherwise be a $400 to $600 pair of glasses at the eye doctor.
Brian, it sounds like so much of the challenge is the education, right? Like, if your only benchmark, and in my case, like I said, I bought the original Gunners, and you're so right. It screamed like, I'm a gamer. It's definitely not glasses you wore away from your computer. And they were extremely uncomfortable with a headset, which is actually why I stopped wearing them. And they were yellow, right? So like your whole world became very yellow. And so it relegated it very much to just, using it in front of the PC, and even that sort of tapered off. And I think 10, 15 years ago, there was a craze around these glasses, huge craze, that sort of tapered off. And I feel like is coming back in a way. And I'm curious, in your mind, is education the greatest challenge? Like, are the influencers the best way to sell your product? How do you tell this story, in a way where, here it's easy, right? You have an hour podcast. We can talk about this till kingdom come. It's super interesting. But, how do you tell that story to someone who's looking to buy a pair of blue light blocking glasses because someone told them, they'll feel better and they'll sleep better?
Well, that's why the content creators are our best voice, because their communities trust them. They've built a living developing these communities and building relationships with these people who are putting food on their table. So we try and work with especially for our Gale program, we're really trying to work with people that get it. Like, they really get it. Their audience gets it. They're loyal. When they advise something, they're like, we trust this guy. Like, that's why we watch him. And if he says it's good, we believe it's good because we're huge fans. So that is a huge avenue for us. Education is definitely the biggest challenge, but it's also the biggest opportunity. It's time to start holding people accountable. I mean, the state of California, I forget the day in October, it's like the 10th or the 12th or something. The Senate passed a blue light awareness day. Also in the state of California, there's a guy by the name of Brian. I won't say his last name. He is in charge of all high school esports in the entire state of California. I've reached out to him several times. I'm trying to hold him accountable as the person who's in charge of the program, whose state Senate passed an awareness day, who has no program to protect these students. Maybe that was a point you had to turn my mic down, because that one I'll get really fired up about. Because
I love it.
in no other sport are you going in, you're paying $300 for your kid to play football, and they're like, so do you want the helmet that we supply, or do you want a credit and you can just go buy one on Amazon? Like, it just doesn't happen. So like, everybody wants to be taken serious in esports. And then I think our biggest problem is this massive generational shift and gap between the people who kind of had money and fueled this industry, who are like, I see it because I'm a good businessman. I don't know really a lot about it, but I see the opportunities. And then the next generation of what's really happening with the gamer, where the focus is shifting, and like schools are hiring esports directors, but they really don't give a crap about esports as long as the coach is bringing in students, right? Not saying like, wow, we could really build this up and make this like one of the most attractive features of our university. It's like, no, here's a little tiny budget that isn't even enough to buy desks and computers for your esports program. It's baloney. And so that's where I think the education for us is holding people accountable who make those decisions for large masses of people. We start with that because they at least need to listen once. That's fine if you want to tell me you're not interested, but how can you say no to something you haven't even given me a chance to explain it yet? That's always been like my go-to in my career. And then the second thing being is that working with the influencers and the organizations, and a half paying them to promote us and doing the standard deals you do in this industry, but also saying, well, wait a second, you just launched this massive wellness initiative and you bragged about how you spent $3,000 on the mattresses in the house for your esports players, and you won't even take my phone call over an $80 pair of glasses. You want me to give you a check for $200,000 to be the eyewear sponsor, but Serta Posturepedic isn't sponsoring you? Like, bull crap. Like, our product will eventually be a product that is bought as a tool of safety. That's what this is about. We just know how to make it look good. Like, knee braces look cool now, right? Like that kind of thing. Like, you see the guys in baseball and they're all like, they got all this kind of like elbow support, and like, it looks cool now. It's like branded with Nike and Under Armour, and it's colorful and it's got patterns on it. And it's like, well, that's where we're at. Our glasses are to gaming what a helmet is to football. And I don't think it's right for any institution to not explore that as a potential area of opportunity to be on the forefront of protecting gamers, but also for anybody who doesn't have the actual knowledge to dismiss it entirely without having the conversation. And that's crazy. And so, I appreciate you giving me the chance to come here and have this conversation. I've done a podcast before where it was challenged. It was like, hey, will you come on? Because I'm going to call BS. And I'm like, totally. I love that. Please do. Let's talk about it. And then also the guys who are like, yeah, I'm willing to listen and change. I sleep like crap. Like, we have tons of content creators that want to do this for another 10 years, but they'll only do it for 5 because they're not paying attention to their health. And then they're less valuable to their org. They're less valuable to their community, and in turn are hurting themselves, all because they don't want to have a conversation about blue light.
I mean, Brian, you sort of answered my next question, but I'm curious to dig a bit. And that is definitely one of the themes of the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, I'd say, is 80% of the esports orgs have launched some kind of health and wellness initiative, right? It's a health and training center. It's, we're hiring a team chef. It's, and every one of these programs sort of looks and feels a little bit different, but they all sort of speak to the same thing, which is we genuinely care about the health and wellness of our players. And by caring, they also perform better. So it's a win-win, right? That's sort of the message that every single one of these programs has put out. Are you saying some of them are not entirely genuine? Like, is some of it lip service, you feel? Or are they just not all thinking about health and wellness holistically enough, or, widely enough?
I think some of them have good intentions. I mean, I can't say it about everyone. I do truly think there are some with good intentions out there. At the end of the day, it's incredible content. Like, what kind of employer are you or organization are you if you don't have a health and wellness initiative? Welcome to the 21st century. I mean, 10 years ago at the bank, they gave us Fitbits. You know what I mean? Like, and so it just makes first of all, having health and wellness initiatives, the whole point of it is to drive down the cost of commercial insurance to the employer. So let's get that out of the way first. Healthier employees are cheaper to insure. That's why companies do it. And I'm familiar with the Humana Vitalities of the world. but they're also really productive programs. So like there's nothing wrong with instituting a health and wellness program to drive down insurance, because the opportunity cost is like zero. It's like, it's an awesome solution for your staff, and your insurance is cheaper. So it's kind of a good thing, right? I believe that there are a lot that are just checking the boxes of what they're comfortable with doing, that sends the message at the level they presume it needs to be sent, not putting too much into it, but putting enough into it to create content that increases your brand perception of who they are and what they're all about. You see that with female initiatives, you see that with minority initiatives. You know, you can read through a lot of these things, and sometimes you can call BS right away. And there's a few that are like major BS, because I've talked to them and I've said what I've said to you, and they said, yeah, cut us a check for $100,000 and we'll let our streamer who just streamed last night and said he doesn't sleep well, try your glasses. And I'm like, well, your streamer's saying he doesn't sleep well. Like, what is your problem? I believe, though, that health and wellness is a good initiative that caters to a generation that otherwise needs that guidance to be productive. So you don't hire the chef because you want them to eat healthier. You hire the chef because most of them are going to be slightly lazier and otherwise eat unhealthy. Where like you and I might go out of our way to have a healthy meal, right? But if I'm 18, 19 years old, I'm not thinking how McDonald's every day is probably reducing my performance in Fortnite or in Apex or whatever. So the chef is really a chaperone to what you're ingesting. It's not so much a like, hey, look, they were already eating pretty good, but now we're using the world's best foods ever, right? And then as you talk about the other things, like who shouldn't work out? Like, aren't these standard things that like people want in their life? Like, you need to be commended for giving your member an opportunity to exercise. The ones I get on board with are saying like, wow, here's where we've identified the mental side of it too. Like, hey, our gamers are experiencing a heightened level of depression and anxiety, and we take that very seriously. And because of that, we're instituting this process to help get back to Zen kind of in a way, because there's a lot of pressures in this industry. That conversation I can get into, but you hired a chef, you have a house, you gave them a gym membership. Like, that's the least you should be doing for these people who are literally working 24 hours a day, their whole life on blast to entertain you. So I just don't really believe they're solving any long-term true complications that we're seeing in gaming. That's my opinion.
Isn't that the crux of it? Like the fact that especially with your eyesight, it feels like the repercussions are long-term, right? Like if you're 19, maybe you don't, or you're not even, it's not even on your radar, right? That at 45, maybe you'll have glaucoma, or, you know, your eyesight won't be 20/20 anymore. Like, and at 19, your eyesight's great, right? So who cares? They don't realize that 20 years later, like, now I need a 32-inch screen to be able to play anything. Otherwise, I have to sit way up close to it, right? There's just, maybe because the repercussions are long-term, that there's this disconnect. And
we're a little smarter than that, though, now, right? Like, we know, like, you can't just start exercising when you have heart failure. You can't just start eating better when you're overweight. Like, I think we're emerging to that preventative type society. Like, we're into the idea that at a younger age, like if we look at parents now, like I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, they eat healthier than I do every day, right? Because like, I'm going to do better for my kids. But like, my parents didn't make me a better meal. Like, my lunch was like peanut butter and jelly and Oreo cookies. Like, that was my lunch. Now it's like avocado toast and like, you know, chia seeds. And so it's like, we're like in the middle. I'm 35, just to put it in perspective. So like, I'm this not millennial. That's how I identify. Like, I am a millennial, but I'm not going to be grouped into the majority of millennials who are really Gen Z. You know, like, that's like actually the generation you're talking about. And then you have these Gen Xers just kind of floating around, enjoying every bit of life. Like, screw you guys, we got the best life ever. So my point is that the intentions are really good. Like, in the average person, they're really good, because we're so defensive. And then we get into like kind of this gaming culture, and we got it figured out because we've been in it our whole lives, that we're not looking at long-term effects like that. No different than they didn't look at it when you weren't wearing helmets playing football. No different than if you play basketball in high school and then you join a dad's pickup league on Sundays, play it for 10 years, you're getting new knees at 60. And if you would have known that, if somebody would have flew in and been like, yo, if you don't start taking care of your knees, they're going to get replaced and you're not going to walk for like 6 weeks, you might have looked at it differently. Smoking, same thing. Large majority of smokers don't quit smoking until they have lung cancer. And then half of them die, so it's like a sad story. You're not going to die, but I will tell you that you can go 30 days without food. You can't go more than 10 days without sleeping. So you tell me which one you want to focus on first. And if you're not sleeping well now, right now, if you're not sleeping well, what the hell makes you think you're going to sleep better tomorrow or the next day or the next day? And when you talk about age-related eye conditions, it's not old people-related eye conditions. That's not the name of it. It's age-related, meaning that it can be related to the age 15, 20, 25. So now we have to see this huge rise of myopia, which is nearsightedness in adolescence, because this next generation, children have shorter arms in ratio to the size of their body as they're developing. You can look that up. So just imagine your kid's like a little T-Rex. So they have to clothe it's not because their vision is worse, for the record. At like 1, kids have 20/20 vision. So your kid is not holding his iPad closer to his face because, he's young and his vision hasn't developed yet. That's not why. It's because their arms are shorter. Well, when you hold something this close to your face for years and years and years, when you get to high school and you're like on the other side of the room looking at, I don't know what they use now, I don't know what it is. It was a blackboard, so whatever it is on the wall that you're trying to stare at, you can't see it. And that's because you just spent 5 years with the iPad this close to your face because you were growing. And your arms were short and it was holding things closer to your face than it should have. And so now we see nearsightedness in adolescence on the rise. That is an example of an age-related eye condition, not an old people-related eye condition. So there's all sorts of conditions that we think only come when we're old, but they're actually going to come a lot sooner because the things that came for the generation previous to us when they were old was only because they weren't doing all these things we're doing. Now we're doing it at a higher level, faster pace, less healthier habits, but better intentions. So we see it faster.
Brian, I love the product. I think they look so cool. And, I'm going to have to buy, I think, for the whole office. Cause I think if they're sleeping better, that means I can get them working harder too. Right. Is that,
it's like a $60 billion, it's either 600 billion or 60 billion. I'll find the study. They did a study on lost productivity due to poor sleep. They did it in the UK, and it was like, how much money does a company actually lose when somebody is tired at work? And they studied these people who don't sleep versus the people who do sleep. And it was something like on average $10,000 a year in lost productivity per employee, because it was like they're spending a little longer at lunch, they respond to emails a little slower. And when you add that up, it's like the fraction of a penny in office space. It's like, it seems like nothing right now, but then like when you if you do it enough times and you multiply it by the whole world, it's like this really big deal. So that's kind of lost productivity falls into that.
I love it. So you're Jimmy, who sends like maybe 200 emails a day. If I can get him sending 220 with $80 glasses, I mean, I love this. This is brilliant.
Or maybe he actually if he's like me, sometimes if you're not sleeping well, you misspell your name in an email. You're like, I just misspelled my own name. I just, I hit the wrong key on my keyboard and let it go. So maybe he sends the same amount of emails, but the quality of his emails are 5% better, and he converts 1% more relationships that he's out seeking because he's just his cognition and his clarity of thought is just slightly heightened versus what it would be if he didn't sleep well. And real quick, poor sleep, there's so much on REM sleep. It's all about REM sleep and deep sleep, but REM sleep specifically. Your body doesn't metabolize the same way if you're not in REM sleep. It doesn't synthesize protein. It's kind of like leaving everything on your desktop and then coming in the next day and it's still on your desktop. So from like a mental perspective, when you reach REM sleep and deep sleep, it's like filing everything away and like starting over the next day. So when we get on the mental side of this conversation, it's even almost deeper than the physical side of it, because a lot of anxiety and depression is accelerated by poor sleep. And if the screen isn't helping and you're depressed, there's a good chance it's coming from that thing you're holding in your hand is a large reason why a lot of us feel that way because of what we see on our phone. So in addition to not feeling well, you're even more exposed to these devices than you otherwise would be if you weren't depressed or anxious.
And they all know there's a problem, right? You talk about the devices. There's a reason they roll out these features, right? To try and cut blue light, and the monitor makers are trying to cut it. And right, everyone I think is aware. I just don't think anyone's ringing the alarm bells
Well, why are they
like
doing it
loudly
though,
enough.
Paul or Jimmy? Do you know why? How come you've never seen a commercial about the latest and greatest Apple night shift? I mean, they have done, you go look at the Don't Blink commercials for the new iPhones. They cover every single feature on that phone that's relevant. Why are they not talking about night shift? I'll tell you why. It's because the guy who created night shift said, we can't take this any further and advertise it because it doesn't do anything. So we can't go out and say, hey, night shift, use it and you'll sleep better, because it's simply not true, because you can't just remove blue on your phone or your monitor and expect that to do anything. It's coming from the dashboard in your car, the lights over your head, like F-Lux just makes the game look like crap. It's unnecessary, right? Like, and you can't do it on everything. So you kind of like blue light, artificial light, your body's like a gas tank. You get all the blue light you need from the sun, and you try and add 1 more ounce of artificial light, it just spills out, and it spills out into all these different areas of the body. But I strongly believe the reason these companies have these hardware features, and they haven't, Samsung doesn't spend millions of dollars developing blue light filters and the technology because they're bored. They're not dumb. Sony, every single, it's because when the same thing happens with the helmet, when the lady spilled the hot coffee on herself at McDonald's because it didn't say hot coffee, when that mom comes and sues Apple and says, my doctor says that my kid's eyes are damaged from the amount of time they spent on your device, at least they can say, we show on record on your device's history that you never enabled night shift. So you didn't take the steps that we offered. And also it's on you to, so it's like a Surgeon General's warning. Like if on the side of the box it says blue light filter, why the hell are they putting that on there if it's not a thing? That doesn't make any sense. Like, companies aren't pissing money away on snake oil concepts. They're like, oh, we should probably be ready for this because somebody's going to come out and be like, it was your device that made my eyes like this. So that's why I think it happens.
The lawyer in Jimmy is loving this, or ex-lawyer in Jimmy.
No,
I mean, tell me, Jimmy, am I crazy
no,
here?
I want to make 2 calls for this episode, 2 predictions that Paul, as the prophet, usually does. My first prediction is we're going to have a lot of listeners tomorrow that are just going to be nodding their heads up and down, really resonating with, I think, a lot of the science, the anecdotes, the comparisons that are so spot on. The second prediction I have, Brian, is you're going to be back on the show in about 2 years as a congressman talking about your latest legislation in blue light technology for high school gamers that you pushed through the school boards, because
we are working with Game
compelling
Arena
arguments.
on that. I really appreciate you saying that, because we talked to Game Arena and they were kind of saying, you know, some of these schools have grants for people to come out and educate the staff, the students, the parents on topics like this. Like, you might be a good candidate for that. You might be a good candidate to go to the universities and say, hey, I'll do it for free, but give me the audience, and here's my agenda, and here's what I'm going to say, and try that. So thanks for bringing that up, because that's what I feel like. That, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
but
it wasn't an interruption. It's
congressman is like a good one though. Like, you know, I want to maybe not congressman, like something where like people are like, oh, I want to listen to
that. Guys, I know we're reaching the end here, but I want to make sure we get in at least one news story.
And, told you we go the whole way, Paul.
I know you did. You did. But I told you I was going to fit in one. I'm going to squeeze in one, and this is one that we've talked about on previous podcasts. But I think it's an ever evolving story. It's an important story, and let me just introduce 2 separate stories here, but tied to the same theme. So the first, from the South China Morning Post here, and the headline is, Beijing sets up website for public to report gaming company irregularities as anti-addiction drive ramps up. So supposedly anyone with a Chinese ID and a mobile phone number can report gaming company irregularities to the regulator through this website. And the website is designed to support these regulations, which we talked about on the podcast, which limits gaming time for under 18 to 1 hour per day on weekends, and I think it's 3 hours during the week. So they now have a website to basically snitch on companies, and I assume people who are breaking these rules. The second story tied to this is from Six Tone. Gaming company fined for letting minors play past their curfew. Supposedly, authorities in Beijing have slapped an online gaming company with a fine for allowing underage players to bypass the time limits. And this is as far as I know, and I've heard, and according to the article, the first of its kind punishment since the rule was imposed last month. It seems like a relatively small fine compared to the way the article sort of positioned. It's $15,000, $15,500. But it's the first of its kind fine. So two things here, two thoughts, and I'm curious to get your guys' view on this. China, is clearly following through on the threat and the regulation. So this is not like just made up or for show. They're clearly handing down fines now, or starting to. And the second thing is, it seems the crackdown is getting even more, Big Brother-ish, or even more scary, in the sense that this new website's going to allow you to basically snitch on companies or your neighbor or whoever else that might be playing past the curfew. I have said China is a place you do not want to be investing in gaming right now. I said this, years ago. I've said it months ago, and I'm saying it now. But I'm curious what you guys think of these two new developments. Brian, let's start with you.
Well, first of all, I think it's absolutely ridiculous to expect the gaming company to be responsible for policing curfews and time limits and restrictions. It's obscene. It's just, we're mad that Apple gives photos from people's phones when the police have search warrants for it, let alone like. So you really pit people against each other, because it's not what the community actually wants. And unfortunately, that's the government in China. But like, these people don't actually want this. Like, a large majority of people are gamers. That's a majority of the population now. And I just believe that you can't hold the company responsible. That's crazy. That's just not their job. That's your job. You made up this law. If I make a game that I sell to 185 other countries, and in your country I have to implement some type of back-end software, there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be bubbles. And a $15,500 fine could have destroyed an indie studio. I mean, who knows? It could have been a company that was trying to make their name and said, screw it, let's take this risk and see what happens, because we need the money. And now it ended. So I hope that's not the case. But I just don't see the parameters of these curfews and this rollout in general by the Chinese government as being founded on anything. Like, not only is there a curfew in the time you stop playing, but there's a curfew in the length of time you can play. So I'm homesick from school. I can only play 1 hour. Like, give me one good reason. Nighttime, like, maybe I can make that argument because I'm such a big enforcer of sleep. I would never suggest that there be a law in the United States that forces a bedtime for anybody, because everybody's different. But I could make the argument like, yeah, okay, you see that big of a problem with kids not sleeping, they're performing horribly in school. You say, listen, internet shuts off in your neighborhood at 8:00. Fine, I'm with you there. It seems crazy, but I'm with you. As far as limiting it to an hour a day, what the hell is that founded on? Like, it's just nothing. It's just a flex of power. It's another move which pushes us further away from even re-establishing our relationship with that country. It's a big gaming market, but they have no choice but to support it. That's the sad thing. So we're over here mad about it, and over there you won't catch very many people saying much about it, because you can't. You just can't.
Right. I love that you were okay with the forced curfew, but not okay.
I'm just saying, like, I want the kids to sleep. So, like, if you have bad parents that aren't teaching you healthy sleeping habits, and the government's stepping in and being like, nope, you can't even game if you want to, because we know Johnny's not sleeping when he's supposed to be. Okay, if it results in better sleep, like, I have no control over it. I can live with that, but never here. Like, don't ever tell me side note, that there's states that like have laws for how old you can be when you're left home alone. It's crazy to me. That's insanity. So I'm even against that. So not a law, but a strongly encouraged behavior would be the way I would approach it. There, they made it a law.
Yeah. Jimmy, I'm curious, how far does this go? Right? We've been talking it now. We've probably covered it on 2 or 3 episodes now. And each time it seems to get more and more draconian. Like, it seems genuinely like not lip service at this point. They're not just trying to vilify gaming. Like, they genuinely want to enforce this and punish people who are not abiding by it. You think this succeeds? And where does the slippery slope get to in your mind?
Yeah, I got to be careful here, because I've honestly underestimated this story, or this series of stories, from the get-go. This crackdown is about 3 to 6 months earlier than I anticipated would read about the ramifications or the effects, or seeing something like this come into play here. So to me, that's very interesting. It kind of reminds me a little bit, I think, of the policing, not a direct analogy, but the policing of pirated music back in the the 2000 kind of turn, where a lot of the government um, fines and things were against the individual pirates, as opposed to the software and the resources that they were using, which is the case now more so. And so when I read this, one, like Brian said, that could bankrupt an indie developer. But if you're a big developer, if I'm making $16,000 in that same time period, I'll pay that fine all day long, right? So,
Are you
the
suggesting it's maybe this whole setup is just a tax? It's a way to tax the gaming industry.
again, it's still yet to be seen, right? I don't know what else. I don't know. We don't know the
I
specifics.
mean, that's an
on,
interesting conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
right? That all of this is just, they are expecting everyone to break these rules, but it's just to milk more dollars out of it.
Well, the champion and Brian might not like hearing my take on things like this, but I think everything is just a cash grab, right? Everything is a business decision. There's very little room for morality in politics, and it's these guys that are just getting paid to push this legislation through lobbyists or otherwise. So I criticize the system wholeheartedly, and I don't know if that's the case here in China. I'm saying it's very early. I did not expect any of this soon, and I'm curious what the metrics were that imposed that fine, right? I think the story said that was the maximum fine. How many gamers, were caught past curfew, for how long? How much did the company profit off of that? These are all questions I want answered that we probably will never get answers to, just because it is China. But in my mind, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking two things, right? One, wow, they're actually following through with it, and much faster than I expected. And two, I'm thinking, is there an opportunity here, if I'm a Tencent, if I'm a giant, game developer, owner, investor, what have you, is there an opportunity to use this to my advantage, where I could still be profitable so long as I give, the government their cut, to turn the blind eye, which I think is more a realistic. I think that's something that I wouldn't be surprised to see that too, especially in countries that aren't the United States. So I don't want to speculate too much, and I'm already doing that too much, but that's how
I
I
do
feel
agree
about it.
with you, Jimmy. I,
Yeah.
I didn't think about it that way. That's why I'm just dumbfounded more than anything. Like, what is this even based on? And it's like,
Right.
oh, they game on average 2 hours a day, so let's make the time limit 1,
Yep.
and it just becomes a cost of doing business. But they
Yep.
did that to the eye care industry. They raised tariffs not on the glasses, but on the case you put it in. So they changed it to like 50% at one point. It was insanity. And they were just like, screw you. And it was really interesting how they got their money by not taxing the medical device, but taxing the accessory that goes with it. So I really didn't think about that. And that's super unfortunate. But do you know if there are any criminal penalties or fines that an individual can incur if they're caught doing this? Is there a person? Because that would be kind of a telltale, right? Like if they're not even knocking on doors when they see video games on after 8 o'clock, then I think you hit the nail on the freaking head, man. I didn't even think about it like that.
I
Brian,
appreciate. I love that. Oh, go for it, Paul. I
No.
like Brian's anecdotes. They're great.
I just want to read one piece of the second article, because I think, Brian, you are especially going to enjoy this. It says, in recent years, both authorities and gaming companies have vowed to reduce excessive gaming among minors, which has been blamed for everything from deteriorating eyesight to poor academic performance. Leading gaming company Tencent recently released an adult-only game, in other words, you can only play it if you're 18 plus, and introduced facial recognition technology to deter minors from playing at night. But it's interesting that this a bit of the scapegoat here, the reason for the crackdown, is poor academic performance, and specifically deteriorating eyesight.
It's not the game, it's the device. It doesn't make a difference if you're watching Netflix or playing a video game. It's the same blue light. So this is so ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
right? It's the hardware, not the content. That's
Um,
crazy. Well, that makes
we're
me
all-
feel better because it is true. It's just not phrased correctly.
I feel like we're all just driving through Mexico. The police is pulling us over, and they want that extra little bit on top. That's
Yeah.
what this is.
Your
All right,
eyes are going to
guys.
burn and you suck in school. That's the way to get to. That's what I'm telling you. I won't do, Paul. I told you that. Now I would sound like the Chinese government if I came out and said, "Here's why you have to do this, because you're going to suck at school and you're going to burn your eyeballs." Because that's what we could do, and that's what they're saying.
You guys could potentially save every gamer in China, also, though, right? At least if the Chinese government was listening, or if they genuinely cared about
flag.
this.
I could put the flag right here on that. We're capable of that. Maybe if I made it in favor of the Republic, they'd do it.
There you go. I love that.
Yeah, this is one of the best podcasts I've ever been on, guys. Thank you so much.
Brian, on that note, first of all, thank you for being here. Second of all, how can people find you, find the glasses, however you want to be found or followed? Yeah. Where do you want to be followed?
First of all, follow all Gamer Advantage, because they're way more interesting than I am. I started this company being Gamer Advantage and then realized, you need your own Twitter profile. So it's at Ready Set Reedy, my last name. DMs are always open. You're more than welcome to follow me on Twitter. My email is Brian with a Y at Gamer Advantage. You're more than welcome to email me. You want to talk about how you get this reimbursed through your insurance, use your HSA. You think you have the world's worst vision. You want me to look at your prescription before you send it in. Everybody thinks they have the world's worst eyesight, by the way. I'm happy to do that. I'm very accessible, very open. So Brian at Gamer Advantage or Ready Set Reedy on Twitter, and you'll see me active on there with Gamer Advantage and everything else. But everything is at Gamer Advantage. I'd like to plug one last thing. Tomorrow, because this is airing Thursday, I'll be streaming. I don't stream often. It's twitch.tv/gamer_advantage. I'm raising money for the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation. We raised like $1,500 on our last stream, which I was like blown away by that. In 2 hours, we raised $1,500. So we're doing it again on Friday. So I'm going to be streaming.
What time, Brian?
Friday would be 3 p.m. Eastern.
Cool.
Yep. And so if you want to meet me after this podcast, that's a great place to do it, because it's mostly like interacting with chat and hanging out and having a good time. So that I've never plugged my stream before, so that's kind of cool.
I hope everyone definitely checks it out. I know I will. And
you.
definitely, I encourage all of our listeners to go check out gameradvantage.com because the product really is cool. Brian, thank you. Jimmy, thank you. For all of our listeners, just a couple of reminders, guys. Every Wednesday, 8:30 Eastern time, we do our live stream. We cover all the news that didn't make it into the podcast. It's a lot of fun. Highly recommend everyone showing up. And make sure to follow us everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. It's all Busy Sports, Business of Esports. Really appreciate that. As always, guys, thank you. And we will see you next week.